So you've got a Fender Blues Deluxe and you're trying to figure out how to dial it in, and you want it to sound wicked good. Hey everyone, I'm Jack Fossett. Welcome to the channel and to this review and tone tips video on the Fender Blues Deluxe. Many of you know I've done a lot of videos regarding how to dial in amplifiers. I've always called it tone tips or something different. And I'm from Maine, and I don't know why this title didn't dawn on me earlier. Because I want to help you guys make your amp sound wicked good. Let's figure out how to dial in the Fender Blues Deluxe. Now, this amp, I think, much like its junior cousin, the Blues Junior, brother, sister, something, there's some kind of family connection there. Here's the honest-to-goodness truth about it. Is it a good amp? Yes. Can you get good tones out of it? Yes. Does it have style? Of course. It's oozing with style with the tweed and Fender tube amp and everything. Could it be a lot better than it is? Absolutely. I think Fender with these amps got them good enough, realizing that they would sell a whole bunch of amplifiers based on the fact that it's a Fender tube amp, specifically a Fender tweed tube amp, and then even more specifically that says blues on it. And credit to their marketing team, they were right. I wish these amps were better than they are, but that's not to say that they're not good amps. You can certainly take them out. They're pretty reliable. They're, a lot of techs know how to work on them. They are real solid workhorse amps for everything that they're not. But there are a couple of key things I've found with these amplifiers that kind of help you dial them in the right way, because they can get some tones that are a little not good, a little unpleasant on the ears, a little unpleasant on your audience's ears particularly, which is what you all want to avoid. Now, the number one cardinal rule with this amp, in my opinion, is to use the number 2 input, the low gain input, because this amp is so brash and edgy and in your face, and it's a little rough around those edges, a little rough around the edges, the edginess. It's a little rough around the edges in a very unpleasant way. Now, I know some of you might say, well, in a live context that can be really useful because it kind of cuts through, but here's the thing. Bad edgy and good edgy are two different things. An amp can cut and still have good tone. An amp can cut and still have bad tone. And the edginess on this, to me, is always just like, it's a little not good. When you use the number 2 input, which is what you're hearing in this whole video, I'm not going into the high gain input at all, it's still got plenty of presence. It's still got plenty of articulation. It's still got plenty of bite, plenty of edge, and would absolutely still cut through a mix. It doesn't sound muffled or weak at all. it's still plenty loud. This is one of those amps that one of the problems with them, I don't know if it's a problem so much as something to be aware of, but they do kind of go from 0 to paint peeling like very quickly on the knob. So you don't have an awful lot of room to play with them volume-wise. There is one way around that, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But my point is that even using the number 2 input, you've got plenty of everything that you possibly need. So that would be my absolute number 1 tip on how to get a good tone out of this amp. Along those lines, there's 2 other things. First of all, the fact that this amp has a bright switch is utterly ridiculous. I can't think of a guitar so dark that this amplifier would need the bright switch. I could be wrong. If there are any of you that use the bright switch and you like it, and you have a guitar that it suits, please feel free to let me know in the comments, but that's one that I've never even considered pressing on this amp. It's just, you don't need more brightness, which then takes me to the EQ. Any amp figuring out how to dial it in, it's all about the EQ. The thing about this amp is the EQ is very big, and where you get into trouble with it is when you give it too much of the EQ. So I keep everything back. It's a bassy amp, so I keep the bass back. I've got the bass set pretty low. I keep the treble back because it's a pretty bright and edgy amp. Now, I do want to be clear about one thing here, and this is, for a lot of the clips that you're hearing in this, obviously just played to a jam track, but for a lot of the clips you're hearing in this, it's just me here in the room. And I don't need as much brightness in that context as I would in a band context. And every band is different, every guitar is different, every guitar player is different. So don't look at the way that I have the EQ here as any sort of like, it's got to be like this to sound good. Now, you find what works for you. And for a lot of people, you're going to push the treble a little higher than I have it in this one. I probably have it around 5. You got a couple more notches on the dial before you start getting to like, stab yourself in the temple with a pencil territory. But the point is that be very wary about how much treble you give it. Only give it as much as you possibly need. Oddly enough, the mids knob is the one that I found the most play on, because this is not really a super mid-rangey amp. This has more kind of a characteristic similar to like the Fender Blackface, where it has a little bit of that scooped Fender sound, as opposed to like the Fender Tweed, which tended to be very, very mid-rich. But even the mid-range, you just don't want to push too much of it unless it just suits your particular guitar, your particular situation. The point to all that is just don't give this amp too much. Back it all down. Use the number 2 input. Don't use the bright switch. Keep the EQ backed off. And it actually sounds pretty good when you back it all off like that. You can get some really nice clean tones. The interesting thing about the drive channel on this one is it just doesn't give you much. It's not a bad sounding drive channel by any stretch, but it's just kind of even with the drive pushed all the way, it's just kind of a light overdrive. It's not really that different than the clean channel. It just gives you a little bit more. So that leads me to the last kind of point, which is I think this really works best as a pedal platform. Apologies if you're not a pedal person, you can certainly still use this amp, but you're just not going to get much drive out of it. And it does take pedals particularly well. So to show it off today, I am going to show you how this sounds with an MXR Duke of Tone. I particularly like these types of amps with like a blues breaker style overdrive, and I thought this would be a good one to try out with this amp. The last unique kind of thing with this, and this is going to get into what I talked about earlier, you've got the preamp out and the power amp in. That it can be used as an effects loop. So if you want to run modulation effects or whatnot, then that can be your effects loop. The other thing is there are these nifty little kind of faux attenuators. I don't really know exactly what you'd call them outside of an attenuator. JHS makes one or has made one in the past. Vic Audio used to make one, and there are a bunch. But it's basically a passive volume box that you plug into the effects loop of an amp. So you can do it with this one. That it allows you to insert this volume in there. I'm not going to get too technical because that's not my strong suit. I kind of understand what it does, but I have a hard time relating that to all of you. If you know what it does specifically, please feel free to let us know in the comments. Basically, it allows you to cook the amp a little bit more so that you get the preamp tubes really hot, and then you can adjust from there. That could help adjust the volume level, which is what I was talking about earlier. That's that little trick. It could also help you just kind of get the tubes more warmed up and go from there. Now, the last thing with an amp like this is really rely heavily on your volume and tone knobs. If you play with the volume and the tone and just notch them a little bit, it can just pull it all down into a sort of sweeter sounding territory, and then roll it up, and you've got everything that you need if you need that little extra boost in your play. Now, lastly about this one is the reverb. Now, just like the Blues Junior, is the reverb awful? No, but it's not like a blackface amp. It's not like the reverb you get on a twin reverb or a Princeton or a Deluxe, or it's a little brighter and a little splashier. I think it sounds better with a reverb pedal. I think this just works as a great clean platform to run your pedal board into. I mean, that's the way that I see this amp. If I use the reverb, and I will show you a sample with some of the reverb, if I use the reverb, I'm going to use it more sparingly generally. It doesn't sound awful, but it's not that legendary Fender tube amp reverb that I think a lot of people are hoping for. So that's what I have to say about the Fender Blues Deluxe. This one I am borrowing from a friend of mine named Michael Corletto, who I've been playing in his band. He's a very talented country guitar player, singer, and songwriter. Please check out his music. I'm going to put links to it. Back me up on this because I told him he'd be super famous if he lent me this amplifier to use videos, so like, you do me a solid here. And now we're going to get into some tones. I'm going to show you some great clean tones. I'm going to show you the reverb. I'm going to show you the drive tones, and also how it works with the MXR Duke of Tone, which is, again, kind of a straight-up blues breaker style overdrive pedal. Going to run it into the clean channel, going to run it into the dirty channel as well, so that you can kind of hear the differences between the pedal drive, between the amp drive, and then boosting the amp's drive channel with an overdrive, because obviously that's something people do anyway, and this amp was really tailored to it since the drive channel doesn't have that much drive. But let us know what you think. Do you own the Blues Deluxe? How do you dial it in? Do you have anything that's different than what I've said in this? Anything that kind of conflicts with what I say, or do you pretty much agree with what I say about this amplifier? Again, for all that they're not, they are really solid sounding, reliable tube amps that have been around for a long time. So stick around for some more tone here. If you want to support the channel, by the way, there is a link below where you can purchase this amplifier. That is an affiliate link. If you buy anything through that link, I get commission at no extra cost to you. You will also find my PayPal and Venmo, and if you send me a tip or donation of $7 or more, 7 because we're expecting our 7th child, for real life, a tip of $7 or more, I'm going to give you access to a website where you can get all of my music downloads, including jam tracks, and that's going to be good forever. Anything that I ever record, it's going to go up there. You will always have access to this website and all of these downloads. So let us know what you think. I'm Jack Fossett. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. I hope you enjoy the rest of the video.